let's make plant-based Swedish meatballs. All right, to start with, we're gonna make some meatballs, and these are a seitan-based meatball. So we're gonna start with half a cup of vital wheat gluten. To that, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of oregano, and here's where it gets a little weird, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground allspice. I didn't actually have ground allspice, so I made up some by using whole allspice berries in a spice blender, and I probably got a little bit more than a 1/2 teaspoon, but this is how I did it the first time when I was testing, so maybe we'll just call it a teaspoon. Add some black pepper, I would say about 1/2 teaspoon or so.
Now we know there are thousands of ways to make meatballs, and particularly Swedish meatballs.
And now we mix. All right, once that's mixed, I'm gonna get some wet stuff together. Now it's not all wet, but here we have a 1/2 cup of, this is silk cashew milk, and I have a 1/2 cup of panko style breadcrumbs. That's right, the breadcrumbs go into the milk. I'm also going to add about a teaspoon of artificial chicken flavor broth mix from the Asian market. This stuff is awesome.
Unfortunately, I can't find a link for that at Amazon, so I'm going to link in our description the Better Than Bouillon chicken that you can substitute for that.
Yeah, you can absolutely use that if you want to. It totally works just as well. I'm just gonna mix that together. Now, you might be wondering, like Derica is right now, why did you put the breadcrumbs in the milk? It's to let them soak up a little bit of that liquid. See, look at that. Doesn't that look so appetizing? It's to soak up some of the liquid before we add it into our mix here.
And this is part of the anatomy of the meatball.
Yes.
Originally, breadcrumbs were used in addition to the meat mixture to expand the recipe, to make more of an economical base.
Just stretch it.
Right. But this neat thing occurred with adding the breadcrumbs, particularly with a moisture component added into it, is those breadcrumbs really retained moisture within the meat mixture. So it's not just for an economy anymore.
And by putting it right in with the liquid, it did help them to soak up a little bit, but it also allows me to mix it in a little more thoroughly, so we get a little bit more breadcrumb in our meatball. It's looking a little on the dry side, so I think I'm gonna need an extra, say, 1/4 cup of milk. Yep, about a 1/4 cup more, and continue mixing. Those breadcrumbs will actually soak up quite a bit of the liquid. Now, we ate this for dinner last week, and we were both quite shocked at how well it came out. It was so close to Swedish meatballs we've actually had in the past. There's a million ways to do it, like Derica said, but this actually seemed to work really, really well. At some point, you just gotta get your hands in there and mix it up. And you might be thinking, these are looking awful wet. Well, they haven't really soaked anything up yet, so give it a couple minutes here as I'm mixing. It should be moist, but it shouldn't be like dripping. And as you can see, soaked up all that liquid. Now I just wanna give it a quick knead, form some gluten so that they stick together. The breadcrumbs also help as a textural component. What'll happen is meatballs, normally are made of a ground product that will fall apart as you chew it and as you try to cut into it. Whereas seitan doesn't always do that. See how that's coming apart though nicely? It'll fall apart when you bite it, just like, a regular meatball would. Okay, now comes the fun part. We get to make meatballs. I make little teeny tiny ones for this because they cook more thoroughly, they are easier to chew and bite, and you don't want to go any bigger than about that, maybe just a slightly smaller than a 1/4. They're pretty small. They also expand as you cook them. Let's bring over our bamboo steaming basket, and I'm going to start layering these in. Now, I will admit, using the bamboo steaming basket without anything in it, they don't stick, but what happens is they do get a little bit of the edge of the steaming basket into them. If that really bothers you, you can figure out some way to cook them and keep them round. I have yet to figure that out, so I just use the steaming basket and they come out, a little dome-shaped, but I'm okay with that. Just try to keep a consistent size. This should make almost 20 meatballs, believe it or not. We actually use this as a serving for 3, so that's fairly large amount. If you wanted to make more, of course, you can just alter the recipe, amp it up, amp it down, whatever you need. Okay, something you might want to do along the way is dip your fingers in some cold water to help them not stick to your hand, because otherwise this will get really, really sticky. It also helps to form them nice and smooth. And there's our 20 meatballs. Just gonna cover these up. Put them over a pot of boiling water to steam for about 30 minutes. Swedish meatballs would not be Swedish meatballs without their gravy. So let's start with 1.5 cups of water, get that up to temperature. See, it's starting to steam. For this, I'm going to be using better than bouillon, no beef base, about a tablespoon. I just usually eyeball this. And mix this through. Make sure you get it all. Don't want to waste any. There are a lot of ways to make this gravy. This is just the one that we like. It keeps it relatively low fat, no extra oils or anything like that added, so it's really, really easy. To that pan, I'm just gonna add some fresh cracked black pepper, maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon or so, as much as you like. Next up, we have 1 cup of non-dairy milk. This is silk cashew milk. I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of flour. This just happens to be King Arthur all-purpose flour, and 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. I wanna whisk this together. This adds our creamy element and also gets the starch in there, so we don't have to actually use fat to make the roux. The better you mix this up in the cup here, the less lumpy your sauce is actually going to be. Okay, we're just about to a boil on our broth here, so I'm going to start pouring this in, and I want to whisk it in. Whisk this up real good, break up more of those clumps. I have my heat on 6 out of 10, so it's not on high, but it's not on low either. So you want this to come to a boil. Because of the flour addition, as it does come up to temperature, it's going to start to thicken. Once it gets to pretty much where it's boiling, not too heavily, but boiling, we want to turn that heat down to low until our meatballs are done. All right, see the bubbles are starting to come up. So this is where I just want to keep stirring for another 30 seconds to a minute or so, let that thicken, and then I'm going to turn the heat down. Okay, our gravy's thickened up. I'm gonna turn the heat to low. And then, next step, add the meatballs when they're done. Okay, time is up on our meatballs, so check them out. They puffed up quite a bit, and I just wanna get them all into the gravy. If you wanted to let them sit overnight to cool off and firm up a little bit, you totally can. We've done that before. Either way, they work out really, really well. Now I just wanna make sure they're all perfectly coated in that gravy. At this point, you can make some mashed potatoes, maybe some sauerkraut, and don't forget the lingonberry jam for serving these with. I'm gonna let these sit for just a couple of minutes, and we'll be back to show you how they taste. It's time to taste. This is like my favorite part of the show. We don't have like the big fancy plate because we wanted to focus on the meatballs.
And the sauce.
But
the gravy.
Don't worry, whatever. The pictures and the extra filmography that you're gonna see, they concentrate on that stuff just to show you everything. But oh, wow.
These smelled good when he was mixing up the mixture. It's just crazy.
They have this lovely texture. They're very tender.
Look at that.
Gotta dink it.
Dunk and sunk.
The nutmeg and allspice just sounded so weird to me when I first saw these. But it works. It really does. That gravy, you could put that on the bumper of a Volkswagen and it'll taste good, okay? That's just an amazing gravy for almost anything.
And I think because the gravy is really rich yet simple, it really accentuates the unique spice mixture in the meatballs.
Yep. The texture of those meatballs, though, you could fool an omnivore. These could be, you could tell somebody this is a chicken meatball and they'd probably go along with it.
Yep.
Not saying that that's really our goal is to replicate animal products, but it's a meatball. You want it to be like a meatball. You want it to have the right texture. You want it to have the right mouthfeel, everything about it. And these are spot on, in my opinion. But don't take our word for it. Go ahead and make this for yourself. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on The Bistro.